$30 million. That was the price of my life, or more accurately, the price of my reproductive capabilities, listed in stark black and white. The buyer, Eleanor Vance, the ice-cold eyes to the city's most powerful dynasty. Her terms were brutally simple. Sign the contract, marry into her family, produce an heir as quickly as possible, take the money, and disappear. At our wedding, she didn't even bother to hide the contempt in her eyes. I was just a show pony. She'd bought a walking sperm bank with a decent pedigree. She thought she was purchasing my dignity and my future, acquiring a tool she could control and discard. What she didn't know was that behind this humiliating contract was my own rock bottom, the desperate end of my rope. And it was just the beginning of my plan to lie and wait, to be my time, and to one day bite back. My name is Aiden Pierce. I'm 26 with a master's in finance from an Ivy League university. Not long ago, I was the golden boy, the sole heir to Pierce Holdings. But 6 months ago, a meticulously planned corporate sabotage sent my family's empire crumbling overnight. My father, saddled with astronomical debt, suffered a massive stroke, leaving him paralyzed. The medical bills piled up like a tidal wave. The once bustling Pierce's estate fell silent, and our family home of over 20 years, stripped of its art and antiques, now bore a for sale sign on the lawn. I had fallen from the penthouse to the pavement. Old friends vanished. The brutal chill of fair-weather friendship was a lesson I learned the hard way. Just as I was about to lose all hope, a bizarre and almost laughable recruitment notice floated across my screen like a lifeline. A discreet proposal. The Vance family, one of the nation's wealthiest, seeks a suitable husband for their sole heirs. Requirements: age 25 to 30, height 6 feet 1 inch or taller, handsome, excellent health, no vices, top-tier university degree, master's or higher, superior genetic profile. Responsibilities: conceive an heir with Ms. Eleanor Vance in a timely manner. Compensation: base payment of $10 million upon signing, a one-time bonus of $30 million upon the birth of a male heir, $20 million for a female. The Vances, their empire spanned the globe. And Eleanor Vance herself was a legend in the business world, a corporate titan at 28, known for her ruthless tactics, and nicknamed the Empress of Wall Street. Why would a woman like that need to buy a husband and an heir? It was absurd, but damn it, I was tempted. $30 million would plug the gaping hole in my family's finances and get my father the best care money could buy. Dignity. When faced with crushing reality, dignity is a luxury you can't afford. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The sharp jawline. The 8-pack abs I'd maintained through years of discipline. The gilded Ivy League diploma gathering dust on my desk. Superior genetics. The Pierce men for 3 generations had been titans of industry. Tall and handsome. From a purely biological standpoint, I was a perfect candidate. Selling myself to save my father. It sounded like the plot of a terrible soap opera, but it was my only option. I took a deep breath and clicked the link to apply. I knew in that moment I was no longer Aiden Pierce. I was just a product waiting to be sold. The Vance family's recruitment process was terrifyingly efficient. Less than 24 hours after submitting my application, I received an invitation for the first round of interviews. The location was an exclusive private club in Midtown, the Athenan Club, with security tighter than a state dinner. I walked into the grand ballroom dressed in a borrowed suit and was stunned by the scene. The room was packed with at least a few hundred men. Every single one of them was tall, impeccably dressed, and handsome enough to be a movie star. It seemed there was no shortage of high-quality men willing to trade their pride for a paycheck. The air was thick with a mixture of expensive cologne and raw anxiety. We all sized each other up, our eyes filled with a potent cocktail of suspicion and competition. The initial screening was as simple as it was demeaning. A team of serious-looking technicians and lab coats measured us like livestock. Height, shoulder width, waist-to-hip ratio, leg length. They even recorded our cranial circumference and facial symmetry. Thanks to my 6 feet 2 inches in frame and a physique honed by years at the gym, I passed easily. Next came the physical exam. Blood draws, urine samples, EKGs, genetic sequencing. It was more thorough than an astronaut selection. I remained stone-faced through it all, but inside I was scoffing. This wasn't a search for a husband. It was a high-stakes auction for the finest breeding stock. After the physical, we moved on to the formal interviews. The panel consisted of several sharp middle-aged professionals who drilled us on our educational background, family history, hobbies, and even our daily habits in medical history. When I mentioned I had a master's in finance from an Ivy League school, the lead interviewer paused, giving me a second look, but they seemed less interested in my intellect than in my health report and physical fitness. One of the women on the panel asked directly, "Mr. Pierce, your resume says you're proficient in several sports. Would you mind demonstrating your physical condition?" I froze. A demonstration here. Before I could process it, an assistant was already handing me a clean towel. Under the watchful eyes of everyone in the room, I stripped off my suit jacket and shirt, revealing the clean, hard lines of my abs and obliques. A collective sharp intake of breath, and a wave of murmurs rippled through the hall. The interviewers exchanged glances, a flicker of satisfaction in their eyes. In that moment, I understood with chilling clarity. My proudest achievements, my education, and intellect were less persuasive here than a set of well-defined abdominal muscles. After a full day of culling, the pool of several hundred applicants was whittled down to fewer than 10 finalists. And I, with my good looks, great education, superior genes, and those damn 8-pack abs, had secured my ticket to the final round. The final selection was simple. A one-on-one interview with Eleanor Vance herself. The meeting was held in her office on the top floor of the Vance Corporation Tower. It was the first time I'd seen the legendary Empress of Wall Street in person. She was younger than I'd imagined and colder. Dressed in a sharply tailored black pantsuit that made her skin look like porcelain. Her features were so perfect they looked sculpted. She sat behind a massive desk. Her presence so powerful it seemed to suck the air out of the room. She only asked me 3 questions. You need the money. You understand what you're here to do. Once you sign the contract, can you fulfill your obligations? My answers were just as concise. Yes, I do. I can. There was no small talk, no feigned pleasantries. She had zero interest in me as a person. She only cared if I could deliver on the KPI of procreation. The interview ended and her assistant immediately presented me with a thick contract. The terms were crystal clear, more like a long-term surrogacy agreement than a prenuptial one. I signed my name and added my thumbprint. 3 days later, the wedding took place. It was grand but glacial. The guests were a who's who of the city's elite, but they all wore the same subtle voyeuristic expressions. In their eyes, I was nothing more than a kept man, a gold digger who had married into the Vance dynasty. Eleanor in a custom-made gown worth millions was breathtakingly beautiful but utterly devoid of emotion. As we exchanged rings, her fingertips were ice cold. When the officiant declared, "You may now kiss the bride," she turned her head slightly, so my lips only brushed against her cheek. The moment the ceremony concluded, before I could even speak to a single guest, 2 imposing bodyguards in black suits escorted me to the wedding car. Eleanor slid in after me. As the door clicked shut, she finally spoke, her voice colder than the late autumn air outside. "Aiden Pierce, remember your place." She stared at me, her eyes holding no warmth, only a stark warning. "You are a biological asset I've acquired to satisfy my family's demands. Fulfill your duty, collect your payment, and don't entertain any foolish ideas beyond that." I leaned back against the plush leather seat, watching the city lights blur past the window. A bitter, self-mocking smile touched my lips. "Understood, Ms. Vance. A tool is a tool. At least this one came with a hell of a price tag." Our marital home was a penthouse in one of the city's most exclusive buildings with 360 degrees floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a commanding view of the entire Manhattan skyline. The decor was luxurious but sterile like a showroom model, completely devoid of any personal touch. That night was our wedding night. After showering, I walked into the master bedroom wearing a bathrobe. Eleanor had already removed her makeup and was sitting on the edge of the bed in a silk nightgown, engrossed in a financial report. She looked as if it were just another Tuesday night of working late, not the beginning of her honeymoon. The air was thick with a strange, awkward tension. According to the contract, tonight was when we were to begin fulfilling our duties. I took a deep breath, walked to the bed, and tried to make my voice sound as professional and detached as possible. "Ms. Vance, it's getting late. Shall we begin?" She looked up, setting the report aside. For the first time, a flicker of something other than ice appeared in her cool, gray eyes. She studied me for a few seconds, then gave a stiff nod. "Fine." I leaned in, ready to perform my function as a tool. I was being paid for service, and professional ethics demanded I deliver. The fact that my client was this untouchable ice queen didn't matter. My father's medical bills were all the motivation I needed. However, just as my hand was about to touch the silk of her nightgown, she flinched, recoiling sharply. "Wait," she said, her voice laced with an uncharacteristic panic. I paused, raising an eyebrow. "Ms. Vance." A faint blush crept up her cheeks. She avoided my gaze, her voice barely a whisper. I don't have any experience." I froze. The Empress of Wall Street, the ruthless Eleanor Vance, was a complete novice in the bedroom. The contrast was staggering. Seeing this rare glimpse of vulnerability, the resentment I felt for being a tool suddenly dissipated, replaced by a flicker of mischievous amusement. I straightened up, taking a step back. Crossing my arms, I gave her a smirk. "No experience, Ms. Vance, that doesn't sound very much like your usual decisive. Take no prisoner style." Her blush deepened and she shot me an irritated glare. "Shut up." "All right." I chuckled softly, moving closer again. This time the dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the passive instrument. I was in charge. "Since you're a rookie here, Ms. Vance, why don't you let me take the lead tonight?" I saw a flash of shock in her eyes, quickly replaced by a more complex, unreadable emotion. That night, the businesswoman with a wealth of theoretical knowledge received a thorough hands-on education from her newly acquired biological asset. And the process, well, it was far more interesting than I ever could have imagined. At least for a little while, she was no longer a statue carved from ice. Our marriage, aside from a legal certificate and the occasional nights when we had to fulfill our duties, was no different from living with a stranger. She remained the untouchable CEO of Vance Corporation. As for me, after receiving the first installment of my salary and temporarily easing my family's financial crisis, I made a decision that Eleanor Vance clearly did not see coming. I applied for an internship at Vance Corporation. Of course, I concealed my identity as her husband. Using the resume of an ordinary recent graduate, I got a position in the investment division. On one hand, I needed to understand the inner workings of her company. Know thy enemy, or in this case, thy employer. On the other hand, I was still Aiden Pierce. Even at my lowest, I could never bring myself to be a kept man, living entirely off my wife. I had to reclaim my own sense of worth. The work in the investment division was a grind. My colleagues were brilliant and fiercely competitive. No one knew who I really was. They just saw me as a pretty face with a fancy degree who was in over his head. Naturally, all the menial tasks, the coffee runs, the grunt work of collating data fell to me. I didn't mind. I'd fallen from grace. A little humility wasn't going to kill me. Then came the day the department was called into an emergency meeting to discuss a tricky overseas acquisition. The meeting was being led by Eleanor herself. She strode into the conference room in a crisp white pantsuit and the temperature seemed to drop by 10 degrees. Her sharp gaze swept over everyone present before finally landing on me, tucked away in a corner, dutifully taking notes. Every head in the room turned to follow her line of sight. My stomach clenched, but I kept my expression neutral. Had she recognized me, or did she just think it in turn had no place in a meeting of this caliber? Just as I was weighing the possibilities, her cool, authoritative voice cut through the silence. The new intern, all eyes were on me. A mixture of curiosity, confusion, and schadenfreude. I put down my pen and stood up. "Ms. Vance," she nodded, her tone flat, but her words were a bombshell. "After the meeting, come to my office." The conference room fell dead silent. Everyone stared, mouth agape. The new intern summoned to the CEO's office. Personally, the air crackled with unspoken questions and budding gossip. I could feel dozens of gazes, speculative, envious, drilling into my back. I could already hear the rumors that would be tearing through the company grapevine by morning. I met Eleanor's deep, unreadable eyes and calmly replied, "Of course, Ms. Vance." But inside, I was groaning. Was she doing this on purpose, or is she really so detached that she doesn't see the problem here? Great. The salacious drama of the CEO and her intern was about to become the hottest story at Vance Corporation. Vance Corporation successfully closed the difficult overseas acquisition. The company was ecstatic and a celebration was thrown that night at a lavish hotel. As an intern who had participated in the project, I was told to attend. The ballroom was a glittering sea of champagne flutes and designer gowns. Eleanor as CEO was the undeniable center of attention. She wore a stunning crimson evening gown, looking radiant as she moved effortlessly among titans of industry. I stood in a quiet corner, nursing a glass of champagne, a silent observer. Seeing her in all her glory, then thinking about our contractual marriage felt surreal. Just then, an unwelcome guest appeared. A handsome man in his 30s, wearing a bespoke suit and an air of refined elegance, walked directly up to Eleanor. His eyes fixed on her were filled with an undisguised affection and a hint of regret. "Eleanor, it's been a long time," the man said, his voice gentle. The practiced professional smile on Eleanor's face faded slightly. "Daniel, it has." The people nearby fell quiet, their eyes darting between the two of them. I could practically taste the gossip in the air. It was clear this Daniel and my wife had a history. His next words confirmed my suspicion. "I heard you got married," he said, his tone laced with a subtle accusation and pain. "Why didn't you wait for me to come back?" Eleanor's brow furrowed. Just as she was about to speak, some strange impulse took over me. I walked over and in one smooth, natural motion, I slid my arm around her waist. Her body tensed for a second, but didn't pull away. I turned to Daniel, flashing him a perfect, unassailable smile. My tone was intimate with just the right amount of feigned confusion. "Honey, who's this guy?" "A friend of yours." The word honey landed like a thunderclap, echoing in the sudden silence. The phrase "this guy" made the man's polished expression crack, his face turning pale. He stared at me, then back at Eleanor, his refined demeanor vanishing, replaced by pure shock and anger. Eleanor shot me a surprised look, but she recovered instantly. She leaned into my hold, tacitly accepting the title. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. They were all staring at us as if they had just discovered fire. "And who are you?" Daniel asked, his voice tight with fury. My smile widened. I tightened my grip on Eleanor's waist. A clear gesture of ownership. "I'm her husband, Aiden Pierce." "And you are?" Daniel was practically shaking with rage, clearly unprepared for my sudden appearance and my audacity. He glared at me, then at the impassive Eleanor. Finally, unable to form a coherent response, he slammed his champagne flute onto the floor. It shattered with a sharp crack. He turned on his heel and stormed out of the ballroom. His face a mask of fury. A dead silence fell over the party. Watching Daniel's pathetic exit, I felt a strange satisfying thrill. My hand was still on Eleanor's waist. I could feel its slender curve and the warmth of her skin beneath the silk gown. She tilted her head, her voice a low whisper only I could hear. "Aiden, you did that on purpose." I leaned in, my lips close to her ear and whispered back, "Ms. Vance. Maintaining the stability of our contract is also part of my job description, isn't it?" Her eyes flickered, but she said nothing more. From that day on, the rumors about the CEO's mysterious husband gained a new explosive chapter. The one where he publicly humiliated her old flame in my image as the intern became more enigmatic than ever. After the dramatic showdown at the gala, the dynamic between Eleanor and me shifted. Her gaze held less clinical assessment and more genuine curiosity. At the office, however, I continued my charade as the diligent intern, running errands and offering milk-tone suggestions in meetings. At night, I'd return to our luxurious, cold penthouse and maintain our respectful but frosty marital arrangement. Only late at night after Eleanor was asleep would I open my personal laptop and attend to the real business of Aiden Pierce. Pierce Holdings may have fallen, but my years of experience and the network I'd built in the financial world were still intact. I was secretly working to uncover the truth behind my family's ruin while simultaneously rebuilding my own capital for the future. Operating under the alias K, I made a series of covert trades on international markets. High-risk, high-reward moves that got in and out fast. It was what I did best, one of the few things left in my life that I could still control. I thought I'd hidden it all perfectly. Until one night, I was in the study, deep in concentration, analyzing a complex stock chart and deciphering an encrypted email from Swiss Bank. I was so focused I didn't hear Eleanor come up behind me. "What are you doing?" Her cool voice sliced through the silence, making me jump. I slammed the laptop shut and spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs. She stood there in her pajamas, arms crossed, her sharp eyes fixed on my computer, her face an unreadable mask. "Nothing, just some personal business," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Personal business," she arched an eyebrow, stepping closer. The kind that requires triple encryption and a multinational server network. My stomach dropped. She'd seen Aiden Pierce, she said, her voice low and penetrating as she closed the distance between us. Her gaze was like a laser trying to see right through me. I think I saw the signature 4K as in the legendary Phantom Trader K from the financial world, correct? I remained silent. At this point, denial was useless. Her expression became a whirlwind of emotions. Shock, disbelief, and something else I couldn't quite decipher. An Ivy League finance master. The mysterious Trader K. In your working as an intern at my company, you signed a humiliating contract all for money. She took another step, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Aiden Pierce, who are you really? What is your true motive for getting close to me? The air in the room felt solid. I looked at the undisguised suspicion in her eyes and knew that the thin veil of trust between us, a trust based solely on a business contract, had just been torn to shreds. I took a deep breath and met her gaze. I am Aiden Pierce, I said slowly. I fall an aristocrat who desperately needed money and a trader who happens to know a thing or two about the market. As for my motive, it had started simple: money. But now maybe it wasn't just about the money anymore. Looking at this woman, my employer, my contractual partner, and my legal wife, I had the sinking feeling that our relationship was about to become infinitely more complicated than a simple cold contract. In the days after my identity was exposed, the air between Eleanor and me could have frozen fire. She stopped coming back to our penthouse, opting to stay in her private suite at the office tower. Our only interactions were brief, awkward encounters in elevators, hallways, or meetings. She looked at me with a guarded, scrutinizing gaze, as if I were a wolf she'd mistakenly led into the fold. Trust once broken is nearly impossible to piece back together, especially in a relationship built on a transaction. The revelation of being K hadn't brought us closer. It had convinced her I was a fraud from the very beginning. One afternoon, just after I'd finished a presentation in my role as the intern, a role I stubbornly clung to, despite the entire company now looking at me like some kind of alien specimen, Eleanor's executive assistant, Sarah, approached me. Mr. Pierce, Sarah said, her expression a mix of professionalism and pity. Ms. Vance would like to see you in her office. It's about the contract. My stomach clenched. It was finally here. The moment I'd been dreading, I walked into the CEO's office. Eleanor stood with her back to me, staring out the floor-to-ceiling window. Her silhouette was as imposing as ever, but it carried an aura of profound distance. Sit, she said without turning around. I pulled out a chair and sat. My eyes falling on the familiar document on her desk. Our marriage contract. Beside it lay another file. The title was printed in bold, unforgiving letters. Divorce agreement. Aiden, she said, finally turning. Her face was impassive, but a deep-seated exhaustion lingered in her eyes. Let's discuss termination. Termination? My heart hammered against my ribs. I'd expected it, but hearing the word felt like a physical blow. Our contract, it's not up yet. I'm aware, she said, sitting behind her desk. Her tone was as flat as if she were discussing a quarterly budget. But the circumstances have changed. You are not the person I thought I was hiring. Her gaze sharpened. K the trader, Mr. Pierce, a man of your stature, deigning to marry into the Vance family. You must have had other motives. She paused, her eyes pinning me to my seat. I don't care what your original plan was, to get close to me, to use my family. But now I'm done playing this game. Look over the divorce papers. As compensation, the bonus stipulated in the original contract will be paid in full. I'll also add a substantial sum on top of that, enough for you to rebuild your empire or do whatever else you want. She thought this was still about money, about her resources. Seeing her so clinical, so eager to cut ties, a wave of panic, and a bitter sense of injustice washed over me. I ignored the divorce papers and stood up, walking slowly around the desk until I was standing right in front of her. Eleanor, I said, using her first name so directly for the first time. My voice was hoarse. What if I told you that at first it was for the money, but it isn't anymore? She let out a short, cynical laugh. Aiden, save the act. Between us, there's only a contract. There are no feelings. There weren't before, I said, locking my eyes on hers. That doesn't mean there can't be now. She looked at me as if I'd just spouted nonsense from another dimension. What are you talking about? In the next second, I did something that shocked even myself. There, in the vast sun-some expanse of her office, I, Aiden Pierce, former Golden Boy, current contract husband, and legendary phantom trader cat, dropped to one knee before my wife. Eleanor shot up from her chair, stumbling back a step. Her face, for the first time since I'd met her, showed pure unadulterated shock. "Aiden, what are you doing?" I looked up at her, my gaze burning with a desperate sincerity. "Eleanor, I know you won't believe anything I say right now, but please just give me a chance. My voice trembled slightly before our contract officially expires, before the child is born. Please allow me to start over as a suitor. Let me get to know you and let me court you. Let me prove to you that what I want isn't just a bonus. It's you, Ella Laner." A heavy silence filled the office. Eleanor just stared at me, kneeling on her expensive rug. Her expression a maelstrom of shock, suspicion, and deep-seated caution. But beneath it all, I saw it. A flicker of something else. Something fragile and uncertain. "Aiden," she said, taking a deep breath, trying to regain her composure, her voice still shaky. "Get up. This isn't what our arrangement is about. Give me a chance," I repeated, my voice raw with pleading. "Just think of it as an addendum to our deal." She was silent for a long time, so long that my knee began to ache. Finally, she waved a hand in weary defeat. "Do whatever you want." She turned her back to me, refusing to look. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. My redemption tour was officially underway. The road ahead was long and treacherous, but I knew with every fiber of my being that I had to try. After my dramatic one-needed plea in her office, Eleanor and I entered a bizarre new phase. She didn't mention the divorce again, but her attitude remained cool and distant. I, on the other hand, launched my official courtship campaign. The office rumor mill went into overdrive. Mystery husband begs CEO for a second chance. The humbling of Trader K. The stories grew more legendary by the day. I ignored them all. My pride, it was a small price to pay for a chance to win over my wife. Things continued in this strange stasis for over a month. Then, as stipulated by the contract, it was time for Eleanor's comprehensive medical checkup to confirm the project's progress. Normally, my presence wouldn't be required, but as a self-proclaimed suitor, I tagged along, ignoring her icy glares. The checkup went smoothly until the doctor, an experienced OB/GYN, called us in her office. She held a stack of reports, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Vance, Mr. Pierce," the doctor began adjusting her glasses. "Congratulations, you're pregnant." She paused, seeming to choose her next words carefully. Ella Laner and I both held our breath. Pregnancy was the expected outcome. We had, after all, been diligently fulfilling our contractual obligations. And the doctor continued, taking a deep breath before dropping the bombshell, according to the ultrasound. "It's triplets." "What?" Eleanor's head snapped up, the first crack appearing in her cool facade. It was pure, unadulterated shock. Triplets. My own mind went blank for a second. Had our success rate been a little too high, this high-paying gig came with an astonishing return on investment. After a few seconds of stunned silence, Eleanor's first instinct was to pull out her phone and start running the numbers. I could hear her muttering under her breath. "Triplets. The contract says 30 million for a boy, 20 for a girl. If it's 2 boys and a girl, that's 80 million. 2 girls and a boy, 70. 3 boys would be." I just stared at her. Only Eleanor Vance would respond to life-altering news by calculating the performance bonus. But as I watched her fingers fly across the calculator app, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of a successful business deal, a completely different emotion washed over me. Triplets, 3 children, my children, our children. I, Aiden Pierce, was going to be a father. A father of 3. An overwhelming wave of joy and warmth flooded my chest. So intense it brought tears to my eyes. I could feel my hands trembling. I had signed what I thought was a cold transactional contract for money for my family. But now, as the reality of fatherhood crashed down on me, I felt the hard cynical shell around my heart begin to melt away. This is amazing," I heard myself say, my voice thick with emotion as my eyes welled up. "I'm going to be a dad." Eleanor's calculations came to an abrupt halt. She looked up at me startled when she saw my red-rimmed eyes and the genuine joy on my face. A flicker of a complex, unreadable emotion crossed her own. She looked flustered. Even a doctor couldn't help but smile. "Mr. Pierce seems very happy." Triplets are a handful, but it's a wonderful blessing. Ms. Vance, you need to take very good care of yourself. As we left the hospital, Eleanor was still quiet, but her steps seemed slower, more deliberate. The sun shone down on us and I looked at her still flat stomach where 3 tiny lives were beginning to grow. My heart felt softer yet more resolute than ever had before. Eleanor Vance and our children. I was all in. The news that Eleanor Vance was pregnant with triplets spread like wildfire through the Vance family and the city's elite circles. The family's reaction was mixed. On one hand, the succession issue was finally settled with a 3-fold bonus, no less, which pleased the elders. On the other hand, the father of these children, me, the husband of unknown origin and questionable motives, remained a thorn in their side. This was especially true for my father-in-law, Arthur Vance, the former chairman of Vance Corporation. The man was a titan who had ruled the business world with an iron fist, and he had disapproved of his daughter's purchased husband from day one. Now learning that not only was I refusing to disappear, but I had also gotten his precious daughter pregnant with 3 children, he could no longer stand by. One day, I had just wrapped up a video conference with my overseas team when an unknown number called. The man on the line identified himself as Mr. Arthur Vance's assistant, requesting my presence at a quiet, private restaurant for a matter of importance. I smirked. A summons to the lion's den. It was about time. The restaurant's private room was serene and elegant. Arthur Vance sat alone, a bottle of what looked like very expensive single malt scotch on the table beside him. Though in his 60s, he was impeccably maintained with sharp eyes that carried the weight of a lifetime in power. "Sit," he said, gesturing with his chin. I sat across from him. He poured a measure of scotch into 2 crystal glasses, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken tension. "Young man," he began, getting straight to the point. "I don't care if you call yourself Aiden Pierce or Kay. I know about the contract with my daughter. I also know she's pregnant with triplets." He paused, then slid a thick envelope across the table. "There's a cashier's check in there for $100 million, he said, his voice level, but imbued with immense pressure. "Take the money and leave my daughter. The Vance family will raise the children. They will have nothing to do with you. It's for the best for you, for her, and for them." So, this was the play, the classic buyout. I glanced at the check. The number was certainly tempting. 6 months ago, it would have been a godsend. But I wasn't that man anymore. I didn't touch the envelope. Instead, I took out my phone. Right there in front of him, I made a few taps on the screen. A moment later, Arthur Vance's phone burst, a text alert from his bank. He picked it up, a confused look on his face. As he read the screen, his eyes widened, his pupils contracting in shock. "Yep." He looked up, his face a mask of disbelief. I smiled faintly and put my phone away, my tone respectful, but firm. "Dad, you called me all the way out here for such a small matter." I had just wired him $1 billion, exactly 10 times the amount he'd offered me. This Arthur was stunned into silence, clearly thrown by my move and by the casual, confident way I'd called him Dad. "The $100 million you're offering," I said, picking up my glass of scotch, "would barely cover the children's trust funds, don't you think? Consider the $1 billion a small token of my filial piety. You're getting on in years, Dad. You should save it for a comfortable retirement. Or perhaps you could use it to practice spoiling your future grandchildren." I watched his face turn from shock to a deep ruddy shade of anger. "As for Eleanor, me and our children," I continued. "You needn't worry. I am her legal husband and their father. I have both the means and the responsibility to take care of them. You think a little bit of money means?" He stammered, his hand trembling. "Money can't solve everything," I said, cutting him off smoothly. "But it can solve most things. At the very least, it can silence those who think love and family can be bought and sold." I set down my glass and stood up. "Dad, the scotch is excellent. Thank you for the hospitality. I have to get home to make Eleanor some soup. I'll be going now." Without a backward glance at his stunned, furious face, I walked out of the room. The sun was bright outside. I knew this chess game with the Vance family was just beginning. But now I had the confidence and the capital to play because I wasn't just fighting for my dignity anymore. I was fighting for my wife and my children. "You want to pay me to leave?" "Sorry, Mr. Vance. Your son-in-law's pockets are now deeper than yours." Just as Eleanor was entering her 2nd trimester, her fatigue growing more pronounced by the day, a silent, coordinated attack was launched against Vance Corporation. It started in the stock market. Vance Corp stock began an unnatural steady decline, accompanied by a sudden flood of negative analyst reports and anonymous online leaks targeting the company's core businesses. Then several key partnership deals that were in their final stages abruptly stalled, with partners suddenly growing cold or pulling out altogether. The atmosphere turned toxic overnight. Eleanor immediately convened a series of high-level emergency meetings. As an intern, I was of course not included. But through my own discreet channels within the company and my innate feel for the market, I knew this was no random downturn. It was a well-funded, meticulously planned siege by a powerful and ruthless adversary aimed directly at seizing a controlling stake in the company. The pressure on Eleanor was immense. She was fighting a war on two fronts, fending off the external assault while quelling the rising panic within her own ranks. All while carrying 3 babies. Several times I stood outside her office late at night and saw the lights still on. Hearing her voice strained with exhaustion, but still sharp and clear, issuing commands. The sight was like a knife in my heart. I knew I couldn't stand by any longer. Without telling her, I activated the full resources of K. My team, a covert global network of elite financial analysts, hackers, and lawyers, went into a 24/7 operation. We traced the flow of funds, identified the shadow players, analyzed every move our enemy made, and formulated a counteroffensive. For weeks, I barely slept. By day, I was Aiden Pierce, the unassuming intern in the investment division, quietly gathering intel and dropping seemingly innocent but crucial suggestions to my direct supervisor. By night, I was Kay, waging a silent, brutal war in the digital trenches of the global financial markets. We engaged in aggressive counter-trades, launched our own counter-narrative in the media, filed preemptive legal challenges, and even leveraged a few gray-area tactics to disrupt their operations. For 3 months, the silent war raged, as intense as any battlefield. The final showdown came one night. The lights of the Vance Corporation trading floor burned brightly. Eleanor was there in person, her face pale, but her eyes blazing with defiance. On the massive screens, data streams flickered manically, a chaotic dance of red and green that held the company's fate in the balance. The enemy launched their final all-or-nothing assault, trying to trigger a death spiral. Eleanor gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white miles away in my apartment. The sound of my keyboard was a torrential downpour. My team was executing the final phase of our plan. Huge sums of capital funneled through a labyrinth of shell corporations flooded the market. A surgical strike that severed the enemy's funding at its source. Simultaneously, a dossier of damning information enough to ruin them completely was anonymously delivered to key regulators and media outlets. Back on the trading floor, the sea of red numbers representing Vance Corp stock suddenly stopped falling. Then, as if injected with a massive dose of adrenaline, the line shot upward, a near-vertical climb that was as beautiful as it was violent. The enemy's financial position collapsed like a cliff face falling into the sea. We did it. We won. A deafening roar erupted from the floor. The relief was palpable. A wave of exhausted, triumphant smiles. Eleanor watched the data stabilize, her tense body finally slumping. She leaned against the desk, breathing heavily, her forehead beaded with sweat. Just then, her assistant, Sarah, rushed in with an urgent report. "Ms. Vance, we found them." The mastermind behind the attack was Sarah's voice trailed off, her face frozen in disbelief. Eleanor took the report. Her eyes scanned the page and landed on the signature of the account that had led the counterattack. A single, elegant, and unmistakable letter. K. She looked up sharply, her gaze piercing through the glass of the control room out into the sprawling city lights. Her mind was reeling with shock, confusion, and emotion I couldn't have named. She picked up the internal phone, her voice trembling almost imperceptibly. "Find out where Aiden Pierce is right now." A few minutes later, Sarah's voice came back over the line. "Ms. Vance, Mr. Pierce called in sick today. He's not at the office." Eleanor held the phone silent for a long, long time. The fluorescent lights of the trading floor washing over her face. I could imagine her heartbeat. Surely as fast and wild as my own. "Your kingdom is safe, Ella Laner. I'm here to protect it. Whether you know it or not, whether you want me to or not." After the corporate siege was thwarted, morale at Vance Corporation soared, and Eleanor's reputation as a brilliant leader was solidified. But the air between us remained charged. She never asked about Kay, never mentioned the divorce again, but her gaze was more complex than ever. Sometimes she would just stare at me, lost in thought. Other times, she would deliberately avoid my eyes. I knew she was torn, struggling with what she now knew. The annual Vance Corporation Gala arrived. It was the company's most important event, a chance for Eleanor to project strength and unity to the world. Given her pregnancy, the scale was slightly reduced, but it was still the most exclusive event of the season. Eleanor, stunning in a custom-designed maternity gown that accentuated her now prominent belly, took my arm. We appeared for the first time as a true couple. The moment we entered, every camera flashed and every eye in the room turned to us. I knew she was sending a message, perhaps to steady the ship, perhaps for other reasons. Halfway through the evening, the host announced a special performance. The lights dimmed and a single spotlight hit the center of the stage. I walked into it holding an acoustic guitar. A hush fell over the crowd. Everyone stared, including Eleanor. She was completely stunned. This was not on the program. I adjusted the microphone, my eyes finding hers across the crowded room and locking on. "Good evening. My name is Aiden Pierce," I said, my voice filling the grand ballroom. "Tonight, I'd like to play a song for my wife, Eleanor." A wave of hushed gasps and whispers rippled through the audience. I took a deep breath and began to play a simple melody I had pieced together over countless sleepless nights. The lyrics were straightforward, almost clumsy, but every word came straight from my soul. Aiden sings, his voice soft but clear. "Met you under boardroom lights. You're the queen and I'm the price. Just a contract, just a face selling off my time and space. My degree was second place to the muscles on display. Laughed it off. A crazy game where my pride had lost its name. On our wedding night, you blushed while I played a role and rushed. In the office, cold and grand, just the new guy close at hand. Fought a battle for your pride when I had so much to hide. You said our deal was black and white. But my heart put up a fight. Kay is me and Aiden's me. The fallen prince who bent the knee. Once I did it for the gold, now I just want you to hold. Threw your father's check away. 10 times more was my to say. Fought a war you couldn't see. Just to keep you safe with me. Oh, Eleanor, my wife, my love. I know this star was rough. Yeah, I married you for money. That much is true. It wasn't funny, but the heart does what it will. And God, I'm falling for you still. Oh, Eleanor, just look at me. Don't hide behind that CEO. If I could turn back the clock, rewrite the start, you know? I wouldn't want the cash or prize. Just the light inside your eyes. I married you for money. That's the truth. I can't deny. Now, I'd pay it all right back for a single chance to try. So, here's to us, a brand new start from the mother of my heart. The last chord faded into the silent room. I looked at Ella Laner. Her eyes were red, her lip trembling as she fought back tears. That sharp guarded gaze was gone, replaced by a look of shock, profound emotion, and a vulnerability I had never seen before. Someone in the crowd started clapping. And then the applause grew, a wave of warmth and support washing over the room. I set down my guitar, walked off the stage, and went directly to her. In front of everyone, I reached out and gently wiped a single tear from the corner of her eye. "Eleanor," I said, my voice soft but steady. "I love you." This time, she didn't pull away. As Eleanor entered the final stage of her pregnancy, the physical toll became immense. The triplets were thriving, but they were also placing a tremendous strain on her. Her ankles swelled and she spent many nights unable to sleep. I cancelled all non-essential work and became her shadow, massaging her feet, taking slow walks with her, researching endless recipes for expectant mothers, and even secretly attending a dads-to-be boot camp to learn how to care for her and the newborns. Eleanor never said a word, but her gaze softened and the wall she kept up around me began to crumble. We were starting to feel like a real couple. The due date crept closer, filling us both with a nervous excitement. But the emergency came 3 weeks early. Late one night, Eleanor woke me. Her face contorted in pain. Her water had broken. My mind went into overdrive. But I forced myself to stay calm. I immediately called our private doctor, grabbed the pre-packed hospital bag, and following the procedure I had rehearsed 100 times, carefully carried Eleanor to the car, and sped toward the private hospital we had booked. In the car, Eleanor was pale, her forehead slick with sweat, but she gripped my hand tightly. Don't panic," she gasped. I'm okay. I know. Don't be scared. I'm right here, I said, my own voice shaking despite my efforts to sound composed. The babies are being brave, too. We're almost there. We ran every red light. At the hospital, Eleanor was rushed to the maternity ward. The situation was critical. The doctor determined an immediate C-section was necessary. Sir, the patient is in a delicate condition. Please wait outside, a nurse said, trying to block my way. I'm going in with her, I stated, my voice leaving no room for argument. I am her husband and the father of her children. I have to be by her side. Perhaps it was my unyielding tone. Or perhaps the doctor saw the desperate reliance in Eleanor's eyes. After a brief consultation, they made an exception and I was scrubbed and gowned for the operating room. The OR was a blur of activity, the clinking of steel instruments creating a tense, terrifying symphony. Eleanor lay on the table, the anesthesia sparing her from pain but not from fear. I went to her side, took her hand, and leaned in close. Eleanor, don't be afraid, I whispered. I'm here. I'm with you the whole time. Throughout the surgery, I never left her side, talking to her, wiping her brow, giving her updates. My heart was in my throat every second, feeling like an eternity. Then, the first baby was lifted out, and a loud, healthy cry filled the room. Tears streamed down my face instantly. Did you hear that, Eleanor? That's our baby. Then came the second and the third. 3 tiny, perfect babies safely delivered into the world. 2 boys and a girl. The best-case scenario Eleanor had calculated. The medical team breathed a collective sigh of relief. The lead surgeon looked at me with astonishment. Mr. Pierce, you were incredible. I've delivered thousands of babies, and I've never seen a father so calm and so knowledgeable in the room. I barely heard him. My entire world had narrowed to Eleanor and our 3 newborns. I looked at my wife, exhausted but glowing with a serene smile, and then at the 3 wrinkled, beautiful little beings in the incubators. My heart swelled with a happiness so profound it was almost painful. In that moment, the contract, the money, the identity of none of it mattered. I had a family. I had a wife I loved. I had children. My life was finally truly complete. The arrival of the triplets brought an explosion of joy to both our families. Eleanor recovered beautifully. And though she was overwhelmed by the demands of 3 hungry newborns, her eyes held a new gentle light. I, in turn, fully embraced my new role as super dad. Changing diapers, preparing bottles, burping. I mastered every skill with surprising speed. Despite having a team of nannies and specialists, I insisted on being hands-on. Looking at those 3 miniature versions of us, my heart melted. The oldest, a boy, was a troublemaker like me with the loudest cry. The middle child, a girl, was quiet and observant like Ella Laner with intelligent eyes. The youngest, another boy, was a perfect blend of us both, always smiling. Naming them became our first major joint decision. Arthur Vance proposed a series of grand dynastic names which Eleanor and I swiftly vetoed. In the end, we chose Leo, Ava, and Jude. Simple, classic, and beautiful. On the day they were born, in addition to a surprise gift for Eleanor, I executed a plan I'd had for months. I used a significant portion of my capital to establish 3 separate irrevocable trust funds, 1 in each child's name. The funds were to be managed by the best team in the world with a portfolio focused on bleeding-edge tech and global finance. The terms were complex, designed to protect and grow their wealth for generations, giving them the freedom to pursue any dream they might have when they came of age. I presented the 3 thick legal binders to Eleanor while she was nursing Ava. She raised an eyebrow at the covers, then looked at me with an expression that was half exasperated, half amused. Aiden Pierce, she said, gently patting our daughter's back, her tone teasing. They were born 5 minutes ago, and you're already planning their Wall Street debut. Stocks options. Are you trying to raise a pack of wolves? I leaned in and kissed Ava's tiny forehead. Just preparing for the future, I grinned. Got to make sure our little wolf pack has enough ammunition. Whether they want to be financiers, artists, or a certain corporate empress like their mother, they'll have the resources to do it. Eleanor rolled her eyes playfully, but a genuine smile spread across her face. She looked down at the baby in her arms, her gaze impossibly soft. Sunlight streamed through the window, bathing our new family of 5 in a warm glow. The 3 little ones were sleeping soundly, their gentle snores a peaceful chorus. Eleanor leaned back against the headboard, and I sat on the edge of the bed, taking her hand in mine. This was it. This quiet, perfect moment. I knew our story was far from over. But my life as a contract husband was looking better than I ever could have imagined. After Leo, Ava, and Jude were born, our lives were completely overrun by bottles, diapers, and the happy chaos of children. The once sterile penthouse was now a vibrant playground filled with toys and playmats, the scene of a daily delightful family circus. Leo was a wild child, just like me. Ava had Eleanor's cool, don't mess with me demeanor, and Jude was a sweet, smiling little diplomat who was happy in anyone's arms. Watching them grow from babbling infants to toddlers who could mumble, "Dad," and Mama softened my heart completely. Ella Laner changed, too. At the office, she was still the formidable queen. But at home, she would patiently read bedtime stories, fret over Ava's picky eating, and sigh with a mixture of exasperation and adoration at Leo's latest stunt. The tenderness in her eyes was a landscape I never tired of exploring. Our relationship had long since transcended the contract. We were partners in the beautiful, messy project of parenthood. I still called her Miss Vance to tease her, and she still gave me directives, but it had become our own private language. I thought we would settle into this family of five mode for a while. But one afternoon, Eleanor cleared her entire schedule and locked herself in the bedroom. When I knocked and went in, she was pale, her brow furrowed in concentration. "What's wrong? Are you sick?" I rushed over, feeling her forehead. "No fever, just feeling a little nauseous." "Probably just exhausted," she said, rubbing her temples. My stomach did a nervous flip. The symptoms? They were familiar. "You should rest," I said, handing her a glass of water, trying to sound casual. "By the way, did you get your monthly visitor on time?" Eleanor's hand holding the glass froze, her head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. A second later, she put the glass down and bolted for the bathroom. I waited outside, my heart pounding harder than it ever did, waiting for a market to close. After a few agonizing minutes, the door opened. Eleanor floated out like a ghost, clutching a small plastic stick, her face completely blank, as if she'd been turned to stone. "So?" I asked, swallowing hard. She slowly, mechanically held out the pregnancy test. The two bright pink lines were practically glowing again. Before I could even process the shock, Eleanor took a deep, shuddering breath and let out a cry of such profound, aggrieved despair that it echoed through the entire house. "Aiden, Pierce, are your genes a machine gun? What happened to a precision strike? This is carpet bombing." Seeing her on the verge of a meltdown, I felt a wave of shock followed by overwhelming joy and then a healthy dose of fear. Recalling the surprise of the triplets, I asked tentatively, "Honey, this time it couldn't be." Eleanor shot me a death glare, then grabbed her phone with a sigh of grim resignation and started booking an appointment with our very experienced OB/GYN. A few days later, the results were in. Quadruplets. Yes, you read that right. 4. We stared at the ultrasound at the 4 tiny distinct sacs and were utterly speechless. Well, this was it. We were on our way to having 7 children. My next decade was going to be spent doing headcount. Eleanor looked at me. Her expression a complex blend of emotions that finally settled on a single cutting verdict. "Aiden Pierce. It's a crime against science that your genetic material isn't being studied in a lab." What could I say? I pulled her into a hug, a nervous laugh escaping my lips. "Well, honey, looks like our family is just destined for greatness, doesn't it?" While Eleanor was navigating the early stages of her second, even more surprising pregnancy, another critical chapter of my life finally reached its conclusion. The case of my family's ruin, which I had been relentlessly investigating, using the full power of K, finally yielded a breakthrough. I found irrefutable proof, tracing the conspiracy back to its source, a bitter old rival of my father's, now a respected figure in the business world. The truth came out. The courts reopened the case, overturned the original verdict, and cleared my father's name. The frozen assets and stolen divisions of Pierce Holdings were returned. Overnight, I went from fallen aristocrat in the Vance family's kept man back to being the head of a multi-billion-dollar empire. Combined with the wealth I'd amassed as K, the new Aiden Pierce was even more powerful than the old one. The media went into a frenzy. Old friends and business partners came crawling back. My father's health, buoyed by the news, improved dramatically. Everything was falling perfectly into place. I thought this was it, the final victory. That Eleanor, our children, and I could finally live our lives without any shadows hanging over us. But just as I was ready to share this triumph with her, she hit me with a blow I never saw coming. She grew quiet, her gaze distant and unreadable. That night, after the kids were asleep, she called me into the study. No hug, no kiss, not even a word of congratulations. She just calmly pulled a document from her desk drawer and pushed it toward me. It was that damn divorce agreement again. Aiden, she said, her voice soft but sharp enough to pierce my heart. Congratulations. The Pierce family name is cleared and you have reclaimed your rightful place. And I asked, my own heart sinking as I stare at the papers. And she said, meeting my eyes, her expression unnervingly placid, our contract should now officially come to an end. You are no longer the man who needed the Vance family's money to survive. You are the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation, the legendary K. You have your own world, your own spotlight. You don't need to be shackled to the title of Eleanor Vance's husband anymore. She paused, a self-deprecating flicker in her eyes as she instinctively touched her growing belly. I bought you because you needed money and I needed a suitable biological contributor. Now you don't need me and I have found something more important than a contract. You're free, Aiden. She finished. Go live the life you were always meant to have. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. In her mind, was everything between us still just a transaction? Had she felt nothing? The love, the family we had built? Eleanor. I shot to my feet, slamming my hands on the desk and leaning over her, my voice trembling with a mix of fury and fear. What the hell are you talking about? What do you mean I'm free? You think I give a damn about being CEO of Pierce Holdings? The words tumbled out hot and angry. You think I did all of this, cleared my name, rebuilt my family's company so I could leave you? I did it so I could stand beside you as an equal. So I could shut up every person who ever called me a gold digger. I did it to give our family, our children, a name free from scandal. In your eyes, I raged. Is our love, our children, less important than me getting my old title back? She flinched at my anger, but stubbornly turned her head away. I just think this is more fair to you. You deserve better than to be tied down by a ridiculous contract. Fair? I almost laughed. The greatest fairness you could ever give me is letting me stay by your side. Eleanor, you listen to me. I will never ever sign these papers. I don't care if I'm Aiden Pierce or Kay or the man who married into the Vance family. My only identity is your husband and the father of our 7 children. I saw it then. A flicker of emotion of conflict in her eyes. She wasn't heartless. She was just being Eleanor. This stubborn, infuriating woman who always tried to carry the world on her shoulders, always pushed away anyone she thought she might be holding back. My battle, it seemed, was not over yet. Eleanor was determined to draw a line between us. She moved into a guest room and avoided me completely. At the office, she was the imperious Ms. Vance looked right through me. At home, she was a recluse, having her meals delivered to her door. My pleas, my explanations, my attempts to wear her down. All of it bounced off her icy resolve. She was convinced that my restored fortune meant I should return to my real life, not continue as her husband of convenience. Seeing her pregnant with 4 babies and stubbornly pushing me away filled me with a painful mix of love and rage. Normal methods had failed. To get through to a woman as proud and maddeningly logical as Eleanor, I needed to do something drastic. So, I planned a public declaration that would be impossible to ignore. The next morning, the entire front page of the Wall Street Journal, as well as the top banner ad on every major financial news website, was dominated by a single image. It was the photo of Eleanor and me from the gala, her eyes glistening with tears, my gaze full of devotion. Beneath it, a massive bold headline read, Eleanor Vance, I only ever want to be your husband. There was no signature, but everyone knew who it was from. The ad detonated across social media and the city's upper crust. #billionaire husband #Aiden and Eleanor #Vance romance. The hashtags trended for hours. Some called it the most romantic gesture ever. Others dismissed it as a publicity stunt. The entire city was talking. I didn't care what they thought. I only cared about what she thought. Sure enough, my phone rang that afternoon. It was Eleanor, her voice tight with suppressed fury. Aiden Pierce, what do you think you're doing? Have you not embarrassed us enough? Embarrassed? I leaned against the window of my office, watching the traffic flow far below. My voice was calm but resolute. Ella Laner, I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. What's embarrassing about that? Or is it the husband part that embarrasses you? She was momentarily speechless. Ella Laner, I'm going to say this one more time, I said, softening my tone. The Pierce fortune, the identity of Kate. None of it means anything to me without you and our children. If losing you is the price of having all that, then I'd rather be broke. I didn't buy that ad to put on a show. I did it to tell the entire world and to tell you I, Aiden Pierce, am willingly and proudly your husband. This isn't a sacrifice. It's not charity. It's my greatest honor. It's the only title I've ever wanted because that title means I get to be by your side. It means I get to see you every day and watch our children grow up. To me, that's worth more than any fortune, any empire. The line was silent for a long time. I could only hear the faint sound of her breathing a little faster than usual. Aiden, she finally said, her voice trembling slightly. You're insane. Yes, I smiled. I am for you. I hung up the phone. I knew then that the glacier around her heart was finally beginning to melt. My husband's declaration softened Eleanor's stance, but there was one final gatekeeper I had to win over. My father-in-law, Arthur Vance, the old lion, though he'd been silenced by my tenfold return gambit, still harbored deep suspicions about the son-in-law who had appeared from nowhere with $1 billion bank account. He likely worried that once my own wings were strong, I tried to swallow his family's empire or mistreat his daughter. A few days later, I was summoned again. Same private restaurant, same room. This time, however, his demeanor was more cordial, though his eyes were as sharp and assessing as ever. Aiden, the old man began, sipping a scotch. I'm aware of what's been going on with you and Eleanor and the spectacle you made in the papers. Dad, I started. He held up a hand, cutting me off. I understand your intentions, but intentions aren't enough. His gaze hardened. You now control Pierce Holdings. You wield immense power and influence. Eleanor is the heir to the Vance fortune. Your union isn't just about two people. It's about the convergence of two empires. His voice grew heavy. Eleanor is my only daughter. I must be certain that her husband not only loves and respects her, but also possesses the wisdom and ability to support her, to shield the Vance family when necessary, not become a potential threat. I understood he was testing my loyalty and my value. He needed more than words. Luckily, I had come prepared. Instead of making empty promises, I took a stack of 10 thick-bound folders from my briefcase and arranged them neatly on the table. Dad, I said, my voice serious. I understand your concerns. Please consider these my formal proposal gift to you, to Eleanor, and to the Vance family. Arthur Vance blinked, then picked up the top folder with a skeptical air. Inside were 10 meticulously detailed business proposals conceived by my K-team based on my analysis of global economic trends and the current state of Vance Corporation. Each plan included market forecasts, risk assessments, ROI projections, and a preliminary commitment of capital support from either Pierce Holdings or one of my K-affiliated funds. If executed, these projects wouldn't just generate hundreds of billions in potential revenue. They would propel Vance Corporation through a massive industrial upgrade, securing its dominance for decades to come. Arthur flipped through the pages, his expression growing more and more astonished, his face a mask of intense concentration. As a veteran of the business world, he knew exactly what he was looking at. This wasn't just a partnership. It was a roadmap to a series of gold mines. He put the folder down, his eyes wide with a complex mix of emotions. This is a meta's gaze, my tone sincere. The Pierce fortune is my foundation. But my vision, my abilities, and my team. We are all willing to be the staunchest allies for Eleanor and the Vance family. I'm not showing you this to brag or to control anything. I'm showing you this to prove that I have both the ability and the commitment to help Eleanor take this family to even greater heights. Because of Eleanor and our children, my roots are planted here now. When the Vance family thrives, our little family thrives. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. So, Dad, as a proposal gift, is this satisfactory? A long silence filled the room, broken only by the clinking of ice in his glass. Finally, he let out a long, deep sigh and a genuine relieved smile broke across his face. He reached over and clapped me firmly on the shoulder. Good kid, he said, his voice full of newfound warmth. You passed with you by Eleanor's side. I can finally rest easy. I had passed the final test. With my father-in-law's blessing, the last barrier between Eleanor and me crumbled. Though she still grumbled about my over-the-top theatrics, the happy, loving light in her eyes was impossible to hide. We decided to have a real wedding, one to erase the memory of that first cold transactional ceremony. We chose a private island in the Maldives. Sun, sand, and the scent of frangipani. It was a dream. The guest list was small, just our closest family and friends. My father, supported by relatives, made the journey. His eyes wet with tears as he watched me. Arthur Vance was beaming, gripping my hand and repeating, "You take good care of my girl." Our most special guests, of course, were our three little ones, Leo, Ava, and Jude, dressed in tiny custom tuxedos and a lace dress. They served as our flower children and ring bearers. Leo ran ahead, nearly dumping the flower petals on his own head. Ava, ever the cool one, clutched the ring box and walked with solemn purpose. And Jude, distracted by all the excitement, stopped halfway down the aisle to stare at the guests until I had to go scoop them up myself. Their adorable chaos filled the ceremony with warmth and laughter. Then came Eleanor. She walked toward me in a simple, elegant white gown that flowed beautifully over her very pregnant belly. Her face was flushed with happiness, her eyes as soft as the sea. The sun haloed around her and she was so beautiful it took my breath away. At the altar, we exchanged our vows. It was my turn. I looked into her eyes, my voice shaking slightly. Ella Laner, my love, my wife, the mother of my children. Our beginning was unconventional. A bizarre contract for a high-end husband tied two strangers together. Back then, my only thought was of the money, the lifeline I desperately needed. I never ever imagined I would fall so deeply in love with my employer. You taught me what responsibility, commitment, and love truly mean. You gave me a home. You gave me the 7 greatest treasures in the world. You gave a broken man a reason to live again. People might see the billion-dollar fortune I regained, but my greatest fortune was the day I met you. I took the ring from my best man, a stunning, impossibly large pink diamond that glittered in the sun. I dropped to one knee just as I had that first time. I begged her for a chance and looked up at her, sliding the ring on her finger. "Eleanor, thank you for hiring me to be your husband," I said with a smile, though my eyes were wet. "It's a job I hope to keep for a lifetime." No, for all of my lifetimes. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. She laughed through them, her voice choked with emotion. "Aiden Pierce, you are an exemplary employee. I'm promoting you to a permanent position. No resignations will be accepted." We looked at each other and smiled. And then, surrounded by the loving applause of our family, we shared a deep, heartfelt kiss. The ocean breeze was warm. The sun was perfect. This time I knew it was real. We were forever. Time flew. In what felt like the blink of an eye, the quadruplets arrived. 2 boys, 2 girls, all healthy and impossibly loud. Our home officially became a daycare center. With 7 children, the oldest just over 3, the youngest still in swaddling. Our lives were a constant, chaotic symphony of crying, laughing, screaming, and the crashing of toys. No army of nannies could fully liberate us. We were constantly in motion. A baby in one arm, a toddler clinging to a leg. Eleanor, the former ice queen of Wall Street, could now handle spit-up and explosive diapers without batting an eye. She even perfected the art of leading a board meeting via video call while rocking a fussy infant. As for me, the legendary K, my most valuable skills were now mixing formula with perfect temperature control, changing diapers in under 10 seconds, and making a variety of bizarre noises to elicit giggles from my 7 little bosses. One bright, beautiful Saturday morning, the living room carpet was a writhing mass of children. The older ones were fighting over a toy truck, the little ones were gurgling, and the scene was one of glorious mayhem. Eleanor and I stood on the sidelines, coffee mugs in hand, observing our kingdom with a shared look of exhausted bliss. "Ugh," Eleanor sighed dramatically. She reached out and gave my ear a sharp twist. "Ow. Honey, gentle, gentle," I yelled. She didn't let go. Instead, she leaned in. Her eyes narrowed in mock accusation. "Aiden Pierce, you come clean right now," she whispered. The contract said to produce an heir singular. It did not say we were breeding a soccer team. She gestured at the beautiful chaos on the floor. "1 baby. That was the deal. Look at this. 7. 7 of them. I swear my entire life is now just a cycle of being pregnant and raising children." Seeing her so genuinely flustered, I couldn't help but laugh. I wrapped my arm around her waist and pulled her close, whispering in her ear, "It just means we have superior genes and remarkable efficiency, my love. Besides, don't you think it's lively? Don't you feel a sense of accomplishment?" Accomplishment? She raised an eyebrow. "I feel a severe lack of sleep and have dark circles that are about to connect with my chin." Okay. Okay. My fault. All my fault. I conceded instantly. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a sleek black card, and pressed it into her hand with my most charming smile. "For your tireless work, my darling wife. As a bonus for exceeding all performance metrics and in anticipation of any future surprises, this is for you. The pin is your birthday. No limit. Consider it your bonus multiplied by, well, a very large number." Eleanor looked at the card, then back at me. A reluctant chuckle escaped her lips. She poked me in the forehead. "Aiden Pierce, you're getting way too good at this." "I have to be," I said, puffing out my chest. "I am your exclusive husband after all. Keeping the boss happy is fundamental to job security." She laughed, a real beautiful laugh, and leaned against me. We stood there together, watching our children, her eyes soft and full of contentment. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows of our family of 9 across the floor. This noisy, chaotic, exhausting, and love-filled life was everything I had ever wanted. My career as a contract husband was a resounding success. In the future, it might hold even more sweet burdens. Who knew? But as long as Ella Laner was by my side, I was ready for anything. The end.